So that's my question this morning. Thank you.
Good, 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 good. So, can I?
Yeah, so what you can answer them in any order.
Good, good. Let me power through. Your question was about the strategy of the French, the ideal regime used during the Makiza war against the Bamilekis and the Bassas. The sad point about this war, the Makiza war against the Bamilekis, was the British and the UN knew that French Cameroon was at war, that there was a civil war going on in French Cameroon. The UN knew this, yet it gave us the option to become independent by joining French Cameroon or by joining Nigeria, knowing fully well that there was an ongoing civil war in French Cameroon, knowing fully well that French Cameroon's so-called independence was actually not quite consummated. They were still struggling. They were still fighting for independence. The Umyobes, the Wanji Rolands, they were still fighting to achieve independence for French Cameroon. The UN knew this. Why they would allow us, why they would give it as one of the options for independence, it defeats my imagination. Now, so here we are, forced to vote to join a country that was facing or going through a civil war. Then we, of course, not realizing at the time that the strategies used against the Bamilekis would in the future be used against us. And what were those strategies? They were the scorched earth, burning down our villages, cutting off people's heads and putting them on street corners, on crossroads, using scared tactics, using tactics that would scare the populations, intimidate them, get them. So they will go into villages, and I'm sure you've read about this, heard about this. The French were using the same strategies that they used in Vietnam. They actually used napalm bombs that would destroy trees and deforest many parts. One of the reasons why the Bamileke land is mostly savanna today is because napalm was thrown in many of the villages there to force the fighters out into the highways, into the streets along places like Penja and Banga, or down up to Nkonsamba. So force them out of the hideouts in the forest. And napalm was used, and villages were burned down. And that forced, one of the reasons why the Bamilekis today, a large number of Bamilekis today are into trading and commerce, is because their farms were destroyed. They were denied the right to stay in their villages and farm in their villages because those villages were destroyed. You fast forward to today, they're using the same tactics in southern Cameroons. They've burned down, more than 500 villages. And their strategy is to force us to run away from those villages, force us to stop food production, force us to become refugees in their territory, and so that we would, in the end, be forced to surrender. Just as he did with the Bamilekis, because in the end, they forced the Bamilekis and the Bassas to surrender. So it is a textbook repeat of what they did to the Bamilekis. You go to Bamenda today and to Manfi, and you don't, much of the food that's there is imported. There are days, the UN, I think the UN Food, FAO, I think the UN Food and Agricultural Organization, and other NGOs, once a week go into villages and distribute rice, and it's happening now. This is a region of the country that used to export food. People used to come from Gabon, from Chad, Central Africa to buy food in southern Cameroons. People come even from Nigeria to buy food in southern Cameroons. Today, we're dependent on handouts from NGOs and from. So this is a textbook strategy designed to create famine, force us to abandon our farms, our villages, and come and live in Yaoundé, in the get rid of the youth, fight, so that in the end we would become entirely dependent on them. Now, so for the second question, parliamentary system, the power change sounds so easily because we were a parliamentary system. Of course, naturally, in a parliamentary system, the power is with parliament. The power is with the electorate. Parliamentary systems are inherently more democratic than presidential systems. The European democracies are actually more democratic than the American presidential system. Because in a parliamentary system, you can easily call for a vote of no confidence. You can force the government to call for new elections. You can cause the government to collapse. There's greater accountability. There's greater transparency. Every member of parliament has the power to question and to challenge the prime minister. The prime minister, of course, is just one amongst all of the ministers, and so he is a co-equal to an extent. Unlike in presidential systems where the president, in most cases, particularly in the Francophone system, comes across more like a demigod. A demigod. And the Bias, the idols, they more or less worship as superhumans. That's not the case in parliamentary systems. That's not the case in Britain, in southern Cameroons. And so, no law was passed in Boya without vigorous debate. Unlike in the French regime today, where all the laws come from there, go to parliament just drafts and approves it and go back inside. Laws were debated, people got on the floor and challenged the prime minister. They would say no to the prime minister, and unless a majority of parliamentarians voted to pass a bill, it will not pass. But in today's, yes, you don't need. There's no case in which in Yaoundé where a parliamentarian is allowed to sponsor a bill in Yaoundé. In our days, in Southern Cameroon, every member of parliament could put a bill in parliament and it would be debated and passed. But today, all the laws in Cameroon are passed or come from Bia's desk. And so it was a lot easier to look at the options and to get parliament to accept to achieve independence by joining French Cameroon. Now, actually, this ties in with the third question, where was there any political advantage to join French Cameroon, or whether it was. We joined French Cameroon because we had no other option. The option with Nigeria was a no-no because we've had the experience of sharing governance with them. It didn't work out. So we didn't want to repeat the mistake again. So joining French Cameroon was a novelty. So let's give it a try. Most importantly, we thought we had more with French Cameroon than with Nigeria. Culturally, people in the northern zone share the same culture more or less with people in the western province. And in the southern region, people in the southern region have shared same culture with people in the Sawa, Bo, the like. And so we thought that we were voting to join our brothers who have the same culture, and sometimes the Mbos in Kumba and the Mbos in Konsambas, they speak the same language. Go to Munda, people in Munda, Sanda, they speak and understand one another. So we thought we would simply, going back to people with whom we had same culture in pre-colonial times. Now, we did not know about the Bulus. In voting to join with French Cameroon, we knew very little about the Bulus. Why? Because the Douala, the Sawas, were more or less a buffer between us and the Bulus. They were so distant, so far away geographically from us, and even culturally from us, and we didn't know much about them. The only thing we knew about the Bulus, the Betis, in the 50s and 60s was that there was a tribe called Chokbropot. So we didn't know what that meant, and we thought we would share the same culture with the Bamilekis. We were joining to share the same culture with the Sawas, not realizing that there was a group hidden behind that would someday acquire power and then do to us what Hitler did to the Jews. Because that's exactly what BI is doing.
Yeah.
The strategies and the scorched earth killings that is doing that is very much civilized. The difference is that it's not Hitler did his killings in gas chambers. Bia is doing his in villages, in our hideouts, killing children 5 years old, killing grandmothers in their 90s. It's not much different from what Hitler did to the Jews. And had we known that there was a tribe, that there were people this hateful, this different from us, we would not have voted to join French Cameroon. Not in the East. Maybe we would have chosen to go back to Nigeria, but not to join a people who would be so callous, so hateful. And so, at this stage, looking back, we cannot entirely blame founding fathers, the Fonchas and the Joas, and we cannot, there have been cases where people ask, why did they do this to us? These were people they were all from humble backgrounds. They not had the experience of living abroad, studying abroad, or in post-World War Africa, between 1945 and 1960, what some colonial powers did was they took citizens in their colonies and made them members of parliament in their countries. You see people like Senghor was parliamentarian in France, Houphouët-Boigny was parliamentarian in France. So they gave them some basic exposure to democratic governance, modern governance, and the like. Our leaders didn't have that privilege. They were not given that privilege. The Fonchas and the Munas and the Joas and the Endelis were not given the privilege to go and spend maybe 6 months or even a month in the British Parliament to observe and see how laws were debated, how laws were passed and the like. So these were people who were learning by trial and error. They were practicing democracy by trial and error. And they did well. They did well when they were, when they had autonomy. When they had autonomy between 54 and 72, they did well. They were an envy. They became an envy of other countries in the region. And if French Cameroonians are honest, they would tell you that they envy our system. They envy the Fonchas, the Endelis, and the Monas and the Joas, because it was the only country in sub-Saharan Africa where power transited 3 times without coup, without argument, without and you may also have read that on the trip to Fuman, Endeli and Foncha and all of those foreign leaders, they went in the same vehicle. They traveled together. And they were members of different political parties. They were going to political campaigns, and at the end of the day, they go and eat together, they dine together. So they were not enemies, they were political adversaries, and they had the country's best interest at heart, the people's best interest at heart. They always would come back together, work together in the best interest of Amazonia. That's not the case with French Cameroon. When Aijo was in power, every other person in the country, every other political leader in French Cameroon was an enemy. Same with Dia. Dia comes to power. Every opposition leader, francophone or anglophone, was seen as a political enemy. That should be either arrested, should be forced out, or so the French culture and the French political system does not tolerate opposition, does not allow, does not believe in the politics of live and let live, in the politics of alternation, that you could govern for 5 years, 10 years, and then step aside and allow somebody else come to power. You look at almost every French country in Africa, power has always transited either through coup d'etat or through passing down the rule to a son or to a self-appointed successor. Aijo appointed his successor in and in Senegal, the power was arranged, handed down to somebody who was vetted by the French. That's not the case in English-speaking Africa. So it's unfortunate. The events that we've experienced, the experience that we've gone through with French Cameroon, makes us believe that we must fight. It makes us believe that we're on the right course. It makes us believe that we must not give up. There's only one end in sight, and that end is victory for Southern Cameroon.
Thank you, Prof, for those elaborate answers, which have only added more light to your earlier presentation. We have a couple of hands up, and then I also have a question. After we'll take 2 more questions. We have Comrade Ebai. Your question, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good evening, Prof. It's very nice hearing from you today. In fact, I apologize for not using the camera because I'm in a compromised position. Let me go straight to my question, and the prelude to my question is, within the 50s, when we know about the geopolitics amongst the Western powers, and Britain was highly respected because of the great British Empire that she carved for herself. And when our leaders, Southern Cameroon leaders, decided to walk out from the Eastern House of Assembly, wasn't that looked upon as a sign of rebellion against the great British Empire, which Britain was trying to build? My second point, which will be coming as a comment, because I might not have a chance to talk again, you rightly said it, that Southern that time, the report that he issued out between 1958 and 1959 actually gave the Southern Cameroons a pass mark for independence. What made Britain to go around that particular report? Because if they wanted to look at the economic potentiality of a territory before giving her independence, then Southern Cameroon was right. So what we of this generation are asking, what actually went wrong that Britain decided to throw milk and oil on us? Was it a sort of trying to punish us, or is it just because they did not care about us? I think I'll end there. Thank you very much, and I appreciate it.
Thank,
Comrade.
thank you, Comrade Ibai. I think we have another question from Comrade Charles Agbo, and then I would ask Prof, and then we'll hand over to Prof. Comrade Charles Agbo, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thanks again, Prof. You talked about the good and the lack of experience. I just remember that we have these Yaoundé quarters in all of the major cities in Southern Cameroon. And I later learned that there was a migration from French Cameroon to English Cameroon, especially from the Yaoundé people, because of corporal punishment by the French whites. So I think our people only had an experience of the Yaoundé people. That's why they talk about chocolate and sort of thing. So what is your take on it?
Thank you.
Okay.
No, go ahead, Prof.
Okay, Mr. Ibai, thanks for your question. Were the British angry at us because we slighted them, broke away, left the Eastern House of Assembly? Of course. We must not forget that the British are arrogant people, arrogant, stubborn. So they also a frugal people, British, very nice. I think one of the stingiest group of people in the world. The stingiest Europeans are actually the British. They're stingy and don't like to spend money. If anything, they want to make money, not spend money. The circumstances that force Americans to pick up guns against them were the same circumstances that force us to leave Eastern Nigeria. The British were fighting a war here in North America and did not want to spend money in that war, so they decided to tax the Americans and raise taxes in tea and sugar and exploit the Americans, get their money to fight their war against the Indians and against the French. And the Americans didn't like it, and so it triggered the Boston Tea Party and then the American Revolution. In our case, they did not want to spend a single penny in Southern Cameroon. If anything, they were looking for ways to extract resources in Southern Cameroon. And so the best thing to do was to simply attach us to Nigeria and forget about us and then begin extracting our natural resources. But our leaders were wise. They were wiser. They realized that staying with Nigeria would not bring development to Southern Cameroon. So they left. When they left, the British were very unhappy. And they decided to get back at us with those two options. Those two impalatable options. Independence by either going back to Nigeria or going to French Cameroon. Now, if you took the two Cameroons, Northern Cameroons and Southern Cameroons, put them together, we would have been big enough to become a major country in Africa. I published an article in the Johns Hopkins Journal of Theory and Events last year that talks about the value of goods we were producing at the time. We actually had Southern Cameroons between 1954 and 1961. We actually had a surplus in our budget. Every year we had a surplus. You had CDC, you had Cameroon Transportation Airlines, you had other services that were generating income. So much income that every year there was a surplus in our budget. And part of that surplus was sent to fund Northern Cameroon. So Northern Cameroon didn't have much in revenues. They had mostly cattle, and cattle at the time was not selling much. And so we would always subsidize their budget. So we had enough revenues to taking care of our needs. And Britain throughout from 1922 to 1961 did not spend a single penny on our soil. That's why they didn't bother to create an army for Southern Cameroons, because they knew creating an army would mean equipping the army and creating building barracks. They didn't want to do that. The most they did was allow us have a police force, mobile wing, and it was paid for by our revenues, by money that came from us. So the net gains from colonial exploitation in Southern Cameroons benefited went to Britain, not to us. Had the net gains, had the profits that were generated from the export of our raw materials come back to Southern Cameroons, we would have had enough to build roads, and universities, and hospitals, but they went away to Britain, and of course some of it went to Nigeria. And so the British were not too pleased. They saw it as saw us as a stubborn child. And so you had this policy of stubborn child. You give him choices that are not convenient. The British, I said earlier that the UN actually knew that French Cameroon was at war, yet they recommended that we join them. Britain knew this too. Britain knew that French Cameroon was at war. And yet, they stood there and allowed us to vote to join a country that was going through a civil war. What in the world? What country would do that? Because Britain was, let me bring this analogy here. In the domestic system here in the US, you have social services that sometimes when a child is abused or an abandoned child, a child needs foster care or adoption. Now the government steps in, takes that child and hands to a family. The family that believes has the means to help raise that child and bring them to adulthood. That's what happens here in the US. The government is there to supervise and make sure that that foster parent is taking good care of that child, make sure the child is in school and growing up in good health, in healthcare and the like. So this was what the UN, this was the role the UN was brought to play here. The UN was that government at the international level that took us and gave to Britain as a foster child. We were, to Britain a foster child, and Britain was a foster parent. And the assignment was that Britain should administer us, prepare us, and to adulthood, prepare us so that when we turn 18, we assume our responsibilities, become adults, and become independent and take care of our own affairs. But Britain did not do that. Britain failed to do that. And the UN should have called Britain on that. So you're not doing what you were assigned to do. You're not bringing up this child well, you're not raising that child well, you're not educating the child, you've not created the resources. And so, just as the UN failed us, Britain failed us. Now, on to Chelsea's question. About Yaoundé and the Ulus, how well we knew them, how well we know them. Most of the refugees that ran away from the civil war in East Cameroon, French Cameroon, were Bamilekis and Bassars. There were not too many Bulus. Now, the civil war that was fought there was fought on Bassar and Bamileke land. There was no fighting in Bulu land. The Bulus had no reason to leave Bulu land and come to southern Cameroon. The few Bulus that were there came there either to look for work, CDC, very few of them. Some came as married, spouse came as wives of Southern Cameroonians or husbands of Southern Cameroonians. You didn't have a large community of
You're fine, go.
so we didn't quite know the Bulus. We knew Bamilekis, we knew the Sawas. We knew that we had a lot more in common with these people than we had with the Bulus. And had we known about the Bulus, had we known about their culture, and any Southern Cameroonians can, who understands the Bulu culture, we know that it's a culture that has nothing in common with our culture. Whether you're from Limbe, from Manfi, or from Bamenda, compare your local culture with the culture that's in Betinland. Nothing in common. But if you look at the Mbo culture, the Douala culture, the American culture, you can find elements of similarities between these cultures, our culture. So the Betis, we didn't know we didn't know much about them. Had we known about them, we would have wanted to join them.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you. We have a question from Albert Nze. Comrade Albert, unmute yourself. Yes, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you so much. I've listened to Mr. John and it's very inspiring. But there is one thing I like to know. It seems like we've never been angry enough. The killings, they've not just started. When I was growing up, there was a group that we were always scared of. My dad would say, Lansop Pitilok, which literally means 30 neck. That means there are always this that the police become already moving around and scare everybody around, so the killings have not started. When I listen to Mr. John speak, I wonder if they were never angry enough to say this is enough, we can't continue. Was there a point you thought you could pick up arms against these guys? And what is your advice to this generation standing up for picking arms and calling for self-defense and defending their territory? Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe from Africa, ask a question as well.
Yes, Prof, you touched on the Parliament and the House of Chiefs. I don't know that we have been educated enough on the specific role of the House of Chiefs. And were there two House of Chiefs for the Northern Zone and the Southern Zone, or were they all in one house? And what qualified some of the traditional rulers to be in that house and others not in that house? I rest.
Okay, good. Thank you. Mr. Nde, your question about should we fight? Should we continue to fight? But no. Yes, we should. We know we're familiar with this classic expression that says family fights, you fight with elbows, not with fists. You fight in your allow room for reconciliation, for peace. You fight within the family, amongst family members. What we're experiencing with the BR regime proves to us that we're not family. Proves to us that we have nothing in common. We must fight and fight freedom is not given. Freedom is obtained. We have to fight, obtain our freedom. We cannot. We know that there is no reconciliation inside. He has not given us room for reconciliation. The manner in which he's killing our children, our grandmothers, our scorched earth in our villages, he's not allowed any room for reconciliation. I cannot imagine us ever coming back to share the same country with these people. So we are on a road of no return, and we must fight and fight as if there is no tomorrow. And I am proud to see that our young men, I'm proud to see that your generation has stood up and is saying, never again shall we allow ourselves to be treated the way our parents or elders were treated. I cannot thank you guys well enough. I tip my hat to all of you. We must remain steadfast. We must keep fighting. Thibaut Nagy, up until last year, he kept talking about he doesn't see how we can become independent. We will be too small, we'll become a burden to the General Committee. He lives in one Cameroon. But if you listen to him today, he is now saying there are only two options for Southern Cameroon. It has total independence or Union Federation. This is Thibaut Nagy. Now, what caused him to change his tone? He has seen that we are determined. He's seen that we have the means to defend our freedom. He's seen that for 5 years we've stood up to this. The French Cameroon, their army is ranked 70th in the world. Look it up on the internet. 70th in the world in terms of there are 190 countries in the world. The 70th most powerful military in the world. 70th. Here we are. 5 years counting. We've stood up to this army, and they are on the run.
Who's that, Mom?
We control more land, more territory in Southern Cameroon than DRS. They've been forced to.
Yes. Well, when I finish here, I know I told you yesterday I get dish pots for wash.
We are central and parts of Libya. They are afraid to put hinterlands, interior. So we control much of our territory now, and for that we won the respect of the international community. We've won the respect of Thibaut Nagy, U.S. former Secretary of State, and when he speaks, he's speaking for America. Even though he's retired, he remains an advisor to the State Department. He remains an advisor to the Biden regime. So the U.S. government knows what's happening on the ground. They respect us, and they know that victory is going to come. They know that we're going to win. So we must fight and fight to win. Then on the House of Chiefs, Mr. Moderator, there was just one House of Chiefs. It was a house that was more or less its functions were mainly ceremonial. They didn't debate laws. They didn't participate in the legislative process. They were just there, very much like the British House of Lords. Although the British House of Lords participate in the legislative process. In Southern Cameroon, our chiefs did not participate in the legislative process. Much of the debates in Parliament were done in the lower house, in the House of Parliament. They were there as a sense of pride. They were there as a mark that Cameroon, Southern Cameroon, Amazonia, was a nation that respected its traditions. Now, let me share a lesson here. Let me take us back to the French Revolution, and it will lead us to why the French are so antagonistic, so very much anti-traditional rule in Africa. Now, you go back to the French Revolution. The French Revolution was a revolution against was a dictator who was wealthy and took all the country's wealth and used it for himself and his wife, Marie Antoinette. They actually had swimming pool built and decorated with gold. And so the French rose up and overthrew the king and developed a hatred for monarchy and did not want to have anything to do, or whenever they heard about monarchy, they did everything they could to either eliminate it or fight against it. So that antagonism against monarchy rule, the French brought them to their colonies in Africa. When they colonized French Cameroon, they did everything they could to get away all the powers of the Bamileke chiefs. The Bamileke chiefdoms in pre-colonial times were as powerful as the northwestern chiefdoms. Their chiefs had autonomy, they had power over their subjects, but the French came and they replaced those chiefs with what they called chef de districts, district heads. And when I was growing up in northern Cameroon, there was in Bamenda what they call local government, and local government, the king was in charge of that local government, and you had local traditional courts, you collected taxes through the king, through the chiefs in the northern region. Now, in the Bamileke land, what the French did was they took the powers away from the Bamileke chiefs and gave them to chef de districts, district heads, who were trained in an arm and trained to give allegiance not to Cameroon but to France. So at the lowest level in French Cameroon, what we call arrondissement, you have districts, chef de district, district heads, who were bureaucrats. Then above them you have sous-prefets, and those sous-prefets you have prefets, those prefets you have governors, all appointed by their own people, and of course with others from France. And these people from chef de district up to governors gave their allegiance. They were there to serve their boss, who was the Yaoundé, and then on to France. That wasn't the case in Southern Cameroon. Whether it's Limbe or Manfi or Bamenda, the rule there was the most important person in the local district was the chief. And the reported chief, he had authority, he reigned over his people, and so he was allowed therefore to come to Parliament to represent the voices of his subjects, to share with Parliament what the needs of his subjects were, so that Parliament could pass laws that would address those needs. So that was the role of the House of Chiefs there. And there was just one House of Chiefs, and they went along well. They worked very productively, and there was no sense of marginalization, no sense of ostracism, no sense that no chief felt that he or she or he was treated poorly because he came from Idu or from Campbell or from no. They all had the same power. In today's Southern Cameroon, Biya came in, I think, about 20 years ago, and created a class system where he said first class chief, middle class chief, third class chief. During the days of Southern Cameroon, there was no first class, second class, third class. You were in Parliament, you were chief, you were all considered the same. You were on stipends were equal. If you were the chief of Bangsok, which is one of the largest ethnic groups in the northern region, your pay was the same as the chief of a village, maybe call it Batu or someone. And so that's what we call equity, sense of equity, balance. What we lack in the current regime fact that we were numerically smaller. They took advantage of that and marginalized us and denied us the privileges that we were entitled to. And as if that were not enough, they began flooding our universities, our high schools, our courts with French speakers, with people who knew nothing about our country. At one time, the police commissioner was francophone, and it's still the case. The governor francophone, commissioner francophone, gendarmerie head francophone, prefet francophone, sous-prefet francophone. Almost all of them. So really, we were pushed to the wall, and we had no other option but fight back. Fighting back, not to lose, but fighting back to win. And we're going to win.
Okay, Prof, let me ask you another question about your personal experience from your bio. You said you were recruited right out of school into the intelligence service. You worked in Changduala and Yaoundé, and the marginalization from earlier on. So, at a personal level, what were your experiences? Because the Secret Service we knew growing up in my generation was Foshive. I don't know if he's the man who was there when you were there, but what was some of these marginalizations you saw back in the 70s, and what was required of you in the Secret Service to, if it had anything to do with Southern Cameroons, were you required, what was expected of you vis-a-vis Southern Cameroons, or was it strictly across the Mongo, your assignments?
Okay, good. That's a good question. Yeah, at the personal level, yeah, Foshive was actually my boss. He was one of my bosses. There was Foshive, there was Enam Ba. They were my bosses, and I reported to them. The marginalization came in the form of appointments, promotions across the board. The only position that Southern Cameroonians had was to be an assistant to the person in charge. If you were a commissioner, you'd be assistant to the commissioner. If you were a prefet, assistant to the prefet. If you were, if Francophone were a minister, the assistant would be so there was this glass ceiling above which no Southern Cameroonian could rise. So I saw that early on. Now, I had an experience where I was given a service vehicle. Now, my boss already had a service vehicle. So I was given a service vehicle, and he would leave his vehicle and kept asking to use mine. And we take mine, and we go spend more time with my vehicle than with now. On an average month, for example, I would get to drive the vehicle just for maybe 1 week. So the rest of the time he would keep the vehicle. And so when I was transferred to Duwala, the person I replaced in Duwala, he had a 3-bedroom house, furnished, and he was in Bonapriso, one of the exclusive neighborhoods at the time in Duwala. So I come to Duwala, and the guy that I replaced was Guru. Now, a beautiful house, nice, modern, people. So when I got there, my boss, the provincial chief of police at the time, Buru, he refused to allow me move to that started, he took it left. And I'm not alone. Many of my other colleagues, there was Shadrach. It's about 45 years ago. So, but you talk to every single Anglophone, English-speaking Cameroonian, who works with the regime. They have similar stories to share. You either, second in command, and I'll call you back. Let me call you back. Hello,
Yes.
sorry about that. I called Kenneth in Cameroon. Yeah, and we're actually more qualified than many of these guys who have made our bosses. We intellectually and reading performance, even at training, we graduated. When we graduated, let me get back there. Let me call you back. So, at training, even though all of the lectures were given in French, we would still graduate ahead of these people. You graduate third in the class, the guy who graduating number 20, he's appointed major boss. But in class, you have performed that job. This case in police school, this now, most of the who graduate at top of their class, I think Justice Aya had said this before this program. If you graduate first in the class, then many of those who graduate, below him, were made his bosses. Same thing happened to me. I graduated at the top of my class, then the two people who used to come to me to help them with assignments, made them my bosses. So really, I realized early on that I cannot continue to stay in a regime that would never recognize, recognize my work and give me what I was entitled to. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. We have another question. I think what you experience is still going on. The recent case of Sean Dongo, who appointed 17 department heads. Hello?
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Oh.
Okay, you're back. I can hear you now.
Okay. Your camera is blurry.
I had some interruptions.
Okay.
Two calls came. Yeah, but now I can hear you.
Okay. We'll just go ahead. We have a question again from Pa Fru Kimbang and then another question from Dr. Fontem. No, but I was just saying that it is reminiscent with Sean Dongo, who had 17 department heads and said nobody from Southern Cameroons was qualified. So it is still going on today. We see that. So, Pa,
If there is chance, I may ask my own question, but that's okay.
okay, let's take. I think we have about 15 more minutes with Prof. So let's take Pafru, Dr. Fontem, and then Dr. Edmond. Pafru, go ahead. Unmute yourself. Okay, if Pafru is not there, Dr. Fontem, are you there?
Yes, please. I'm here.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Prof. I think that we are learning a lot about how our people have lost, so much of their value by joining a people who had nothing to write home about. For some of us who had grandparents who were parliamentarians, I remember my grandfather used to say something about my maternal grandfather used to say something about the Civil Service Commission. Prof, I would like you to tell us a bit about the Civil Service Commission and its role, issues related to corruption, justice, and some of the issues that eventually led us to this point.
actually should have touched on it with my opening remarks. Yes, between 1954 and 1972, we had SDOs, divisional officers, senior divisional officers. None of them were trained in a school of administration or magistrature. There was no ENAM in Southern Cameroon. Most of these officers were people who were educated in secondary school and in college. General knowledge, general education. They came out, worked for a moment as clerks, as administrators. Then they saw talent. They saw talent in them and appointed them DOs and senior DOs. No formal training in administration, no ENAM, no. So, and they did well. They were disciplined, they were professional, and they outperformed, and they could, to this day, outperform any administrator who's training in that. Corruption, there was zero tolerance on corruption. Zero tolerance. Anybody found even 1 shilling nowadays, the legal tender was pounds and shillings. If you were caught requesting a bribe, even if just 1 shilling, 1 penny, you would be arrested and you would go to prison. And there were many Southern Cameroonians, police, customs, who were in prison for taking less than 500 francs. The equivalent of 500, that was about, say, 2 shillings in those days. They went to prison. So, zero tolerance on corruption. And these are people who did not have the system, had no administrators who received formal training. Now, fast forward to today, where this behemoth that then you only call ENAM, school for the elites, so-called elites, where they train people, the only skill that they come out with from ENAM is how to dupe people, how to get people to give them money. And so, when we achieve our independence, there honestly will be no need for an ENAM. And if Cameroon didn't have an ENAM, Cameroon would have been a much better country than what it is today. Much of the corruption that I have in Cameroon, French Cameroon, and even outside, comes from this institution that is often referred to as military. And it is a legacy of colonialism, a legacy of French colonial rule. ENAM is an institution that used to train colonial administrators. Those chefs de district that I talked about earlier, they were trained in schools like ENAM, trained to go and monitor and spy on the natives, on the indigents, and exploit them, extract their resources, and report back to the bosses who were in Paris. That's why the system is so corrupt. We didn't have to report to Britain. We didn't have to, in Southern Cameroon, we didn't have to report to Goya. We reported to the local authorities, the local chief or the local SDO. Governance was local. Government and governance were close to the people. Unlike the current regime, governance is too distant, so far away there in Yaoundé. That for the listing, you have to get authority from Yaoundé. A pothole in Bamina, for it to get fixed, permission has to come from Yaoundé. That wasn't the case nowadays. There was autonomy at all levels. When there was something wrong in the local street, whether it's in Mancon, Benwi, Bafut, it was taken care of there locally. The resources were there, the budget was there, the money was there, taken care of there locally. That, there was was accountability at all levels. That's why corruption was close to zero. We didn't know corruption. Much of everything was based on merit. You were promoted, you were hired because you qualified. And the exams that we took, GCE, O level, A levels, were exams that were set at Oxford University, same exams that were taken by British secondary school students. And in most cases, we also outperformed British students. We had higher scores than British citizens. Then later on, we took, it was decentralized, and we have taken this same GCE, but it was based in West African GCE. And we were still outperforming much of the rest of the world. So the foundations that the educational foundations have had in Cameroon, very similar to what the Indians have. All of us, everybody has an opinion. They have targeted certain industries and they prosper in there. They in the healthcare industry, they are in computer industry, science, engineering, going to go into further. Those seeds were planted in us in the 1960s. But it's sad, unfortunately, that French Cameroon came and
Prof's phone is muted.
Yes, Prof, you muted yourself.
Why Prof also sort out his phone,
We cannot see him.
his audio, and
Oh.
I also wanted to see if Prof can sort out his camera. Prof, the camera is turned off. I just did not interrupt. Wanted to wait for a break to do that.
how do you turn it on?
No, it's on, but it's not facing you. You're muted again. Yes. It's on, but it's not facing you.
I think the problem is he's using his phone for this exchange.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that incoming calls keep disturbing him.
No, but I think Prof can turn it back on because that's what he's been on since the
Yeah.
start.
Prof, you're muted again.
Can you unmute yourself? Yeah. And turn on your camera.
It looks like he's back and forth between muting and unmuting.
Perhaps he doesn't want to turn on the camera.
No, I think it's a technical error.
Yeah, there's a technical error. I'm not sure what's going on.
Prof has just a few minutes left. Edmund, I know you have a question.
Well, yeah.
Well, let's see if he can come back and spend his last few minutes answering your questions.
If he doesn't, there will be a question I want
Well,
to ask Lawler's audience. I wanted to
Mami
ask
Roland
Lawler for...
Okay, mom. You leave around because he won't go check something. So leave maybe that time 4-5.
Okay, I'll see you again.
Not today.
Okay.
Check your calendar.
Maybe.
Alright.
But depends on how late you'll come. Okay, when I finish, I'll call you. Prof, if you want to log out and log in,
losers to be able to unseat elections. But for that, actually has to be contingent on the fact that
Just start your question. You admitted in the beginning.
Me?
Yes.
but can Prof hear Edmund's question?
Prof is muted.
Prof is muted. Let me just try and see if I can get him to restart.
Yeah, he should probably sign back in. He started muted and then Dr. Edmund and then later on.
Let's see if he comes back and...
He's going to sign out and sign back in.
Okay. Thank you, Pafru.
And in the interim, I'm just seeing some comments in the channel. People are giving giving a lot of thumbs up to Prof and would like Prof to come back.
Yeah, I think Prof said earlier that once we set up the panel discussion, he asked us to add two more people, so we'll probably have perhaps Prof and we'll think of two other people.
Yeah, there was somebody that he had actually indicated, but I think it was too late. So we'll talk about this.
In the secretariat, yes.
Yeah, in the secretariat and try and get that person back in.
Moderator, I think that while we are waiting for Prof to come in, maybe we can add something to the discussion. And if you would permit me,
Okay.
please, once Prof is in, let us know.
He has not even logged out yet, so I
Let me
don't.
call him. Yeah, you guys can be going on. I'll call him.
Yes.
And sort that
So
out.
I think I want to very quickly touch on the issue of promotions appointments today, which have made our people internal assistants. I think that it has not changed.
Yes.
Because
He didn't sign on.
when you look at some of the people who are killing us in this liberation struggle, they have still assistants. You see, Paul Tasson, for instance, is minister delegate, and it's just a way of calling an assistant without naming. Yes.
Mbayu?
Mbayu is an assistant, although he is of Bamileke extraction. He moonlights as a Southern Cameroonian because his parents have lived. His parents lived in Southern Cameroon long before we got our independence, and so
Okay.
they continue to hang around us. They continue to play that assistant role, second fiddle, and it makes them, belittles them, and makes them subservient to wrongdoing in La Republique. Kasika.
Yes.
Something you're turning on your camera.
Yes, Prof is back.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's
Can
okay.
you see me now?
No, your camera is not facing you. I think you have. Yes. I think you need to reverse it. It is taking, instead of the, I don't know what you call the one that faces you, it is like you're taking somebody else. So I think you have to reverse the view of it. Yes.
So if you go to your phone,
Just touch the camera. Just touch the camera icon.
Yeah, and it should reverse the focus. It's as if you are trying to take somebody else as opposed to taking a selfie.
The camera is snapping the surface on which it is standing.
Bro, by this I can rightly conclude that there were no cell phones with cameras back in the days of Southern.
That's a good one. That's a comic relief.
we're taking the dining table.
Yeah, you are looking at the dining table, bro. So you can see me now. Huh?
Yes, we can see you now.
That's better now.
I don't know what happened. I don't know. Okay, if you can see me, that's fine. I've had to reverse it. Anyway, go ahead. I can hear you now.
No, it's Dr. Edmond who had a question for you, Prof.
Adjust your face. Adjust your face, please.
Yes, your camera is on your chest. Okay.
Your height is perfect.
Yes.
Right. Okay. All right. I'm going to spend one weekend with you one of these days, Prof. Just please do. Yeah. So only me can teach you like this, and yeah. I belong to the last century. Yeah. So, Prof, I wanted to ask you something. As the professor of politics or political science, you know this, that the health of any democratic society is contingent on election, like that is election or the electoral process plays a huge role in the health of any democratic society, whereby who conducts election, the participant in that election, do they see it as free and fair, and do the people who actually do the losers concede? So in Southern Cameroons, with that in mind, in Southern Cameroons, back in the days, I'm amazed at what these people were able to achieve. How was the electoral process? Who controlled that process, and how was it viewed by everybody in participating in it? And I'll just actually also follow up on something you had said about education, which is the education of a country. Actually, most countries will look at their education and really try to tie that to shape the future of their country. And therefore, what the content of the education, the way that the funding, the, the relationship of the educator, those educating versus those educated, that all of these things actually are part of a very healthy, can determine how healthy an education system would be. In Southern Cameroon, give me a sense of what the education system was like. How was the content of that education crafted? Was it, and what was the relationship between the teachers, the learners, and how was it funded? So I will limit this to these two. I had quite a number of other questions, but I will limit to these two.
Okay, good. The electoral process. The elections were organized and conducted by bureaucrats, by the civil. There was a division in the Department of. It was called.
Prof, your camera. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, we'll see you better.
Okay. The elections were conducted very much like conduct elections here. There were campaigns where the candidates would go into villages and towns and present their platforms. On election day, the administrators were civil servants. And civil servants in those days were not allowed to vote. They were not allowed to they were expected to remain neutral. And they did the vote counting. They did the balloting, the process by getting ballots together and counting and pronouncing the results. It was all done by bureaucrats, civil servants, in the Ministry of Public Affairs. They old allegiance. One of the reasons why they were not allowed, civil servants were not allowed to be to vote, was because they wanted them to remain unbiased, neutral. The fear was that if you get them involved in politics, allow them to vote, they might count votes and allow their candidates to support their party. So there was this policy that did not allow, if you're a public employee, you're not allowed to participate in the electoral process. You're not allowed to vote. Now, when you win an election, the understanding was that you, the winner, you have the duty to protect the rights and the privileges of the party that did not win. It is called majority rule, minority rights. It incomes on Foncha, who won the elections, to make sure that he protects the rights of Ndeli and Ndeli's constituencies, which did not win the election. So, in a genuine democracy, the winner of the elections has the duty to ensure that the rights of the party that did not win the elections are protected, and that the party that did not win still has a say in governance. And that's one of the reasons why there was harmony between the parties that were in place at the time. Unlike in the Aijo and Bia regime, the person who wins
under credit because winner take all wins, and all the spoilers are his. The guy that came out second becomes an enemy, and if you are a supporter or you come from the same tribe or ethnic group or linguistic group with the person that lost, you become an outcast. And that's what's happened to us. One of the reasons why Bia is so bent on marginalizing us is because he perceived that we were supporters of Frondi, the person that tried to take power away from him. And so, to forever make it impossible for another Anglophone to come up and challenge him, he decided to go out full scale and do what he's doing to us now. So that's not democracy. That's not genuine democracy. That's not a system that can allow us achieve for us or for future generations. On education was, in those days, much of it was by missionary schools, the Presbyterians, Catholics. There was not much at the secondary school level. There was just what? Cas Bambini, which was actually funded by Americans. Then later on you had Ecole Bilingue in Boya, which was funded by Yaoundé with the plan to assimilate, and the goal of that school actually was assimilate. Actually, we were the first batch in that school were Professor Yangwei and others, where Akiri Muna were the first batch in that school, and it was called a bilingual school, but the Francophones who went there were not allowed. English was not compulsory for them. They were not allowed to even enroll in some of the classes that were offered in English. But the Anglophones who went there were compelled to take courses both in English and in French. If you didn't pass the courses in French, you were not allowed to go to the next class. So without the Catholic secondary schools, or without the Presbyterian secondary schools and Baptist secondary schools, we would not have had an uneducated class in Cameroon. Because ultimately, people like the Fontinas, the Angelis, the Monas, they were all teachers who were trained in schools that were run by the Catholics and the Presbyterians. So, be it the British government or the Southern Cameroon government or the French government, the government did not do much about education. They didn't do much to fund education. As much as the Western religions have done us harm in some ways, they've also done us some good. Because many of the liberation fighters that rose up, not just in Cameroon, but across Africa, were people that were trained in missionary schools, be it in Angola, in Ghana, Nigeria. They were people that were trained in schools that were run by missionaries. I, for instance, went to school by the Basel Mission. Anybody who was my age will know about the Basel Mission School, which was run by Swiss missionaries who went across Bamenda, Kumba, and all over southern Cameroon. Then, of course, the Sarces and Sacred Heart by the Jesuits, the Catholics. So, public sector education was not really something to celebrate.
Prof, if you're done, your camera is again on your chest.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you see me now?
No. Well, part of your face. It's.
Yeah, just back up a little bit. The camera, just move it away.
Is that good?
It's moving. No, it's still down to your chest.
It's too close. You should be a little further
Yeah,
back.
it's too close. It's too close. Still too.
Well, that's okay.
It's too close. Shift it, just shift it a little backwards.
All right. No, it keeps moving.
It keeps moving.
It's still down to your chest.
If you have something to rest it on, it'll be better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to, while you're trying to get the camera ready, I was just going to touch back on Dr. Fontem's question before you got. Okay, yes, you're great now. That's great. That's great, Prof.
Okay.
Yes. Before you got disconnected the first time, Dr. Fontem had asked the role of the Civil Service Commission, and you said people were promoted on merit if they saw talent in them. Was that the role of the Civil Service Commission to identify these talents for promotion meritoriously?
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. And in 1996, I published an article on about Inam. I actually I called that I requested that they should shut down Inam if they ever want to have uh, uh, corruption. If they ever wanted to get rid of corruption and produce development in Cameroon, they should get rid of Inam. Now, as I said earlier, in southern Cameroon there was no Inam. There was no school to train administrators, and there was people. And actually, let me link this up to this missionary schools that train our, educated our workforce. In college, along with your science and humanity courses that you take, in college, we are also allowed to take courses in religious knowledge. Religion is the foundation of morality, ethics. Maybe one of the reasons why there was probity in government, one of the reasons why there was no corruption in our government in Southern Cameroon was because of that religious education, that fear, that that moral molding that we got from these secondary schools, these missionary schools. Now, in the Francophone regime, I remember vividly where when you pass the GCE O level or A level, and one of the subjects were religious knowledge, the Francophones would make a mockery of you. They would poke fun at you, and say, we don't consider religion an intellectual discipline. We don't consider it, it doesn't count. And so we reject your diploma. They did that to a lot of Anglophones who applied for work in Yaoundé and life. But then, looking back, one can tell that religion, religious education, and religious knowledge accounts for some of the reasons why there was no corruption in Southern Cameroon. And you look at French Cameroon, which doesn't include religious education in its curriculum. Corruption is rampant across the board. Because you go to school in French Cameroon from kindergarten up to university, there's no course on religious knowledge. And religion, not only is religion the foundation of morality, it's also part of philosophy. And so, in terms of probity, morality, way ahead of these people. We have nothing in common with them. And across all of Francophone Africa, corruption is rampant because they are not exposed to religious teachings. They're not exposed to teachings in morality and ethics. They are exposed to just how you can grab, and deceive and manipulate and position yourself to becoming the next boss or getting promoted or worship your boss so he can promote you. And anybody who's grown up in Yaoundé and the Bulus at a one-to-one level, they come across as very I have a meeting, huh? I have a meeting. I will call you, okay? Hello? It's a meeting. I will call you back. I will call you, okay? I'm sorry about this.
It's okay.
Okay. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Prof.
We can hear you. We can hear you. You don't need to do anything.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Prof.
Okay, okay. So I was trying to explain why there's corruption in Francophone Cameroon and no corruption outside. And I think religion gives one of the explanations. Um, uh, we have to be thankful to these schools train us. And once we become independent, let nobody dare mention that we create an Enam in Southern Cameroon or the version of Enam in Southern Cameroon.
Okay, we know you have to go, Prof. You have a lot. You said you had other commitments. Let's just take one last comment from or question from Dr. Fontem, and then you will have the last word, Prof.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I think this particular encounter, we really regret that Pan Dangam was not present in this meeting. We would have really had a very rich exchange. Those who think that knowing what is going, what happened, and what happened before we joined La République, or what we lost by joining La République, and need to attend this particular town hall and understand that, in fact, we are currently lost at sea, and that until we get to shore, our lives will never be the same again. So I think one of the things that I wanted to find out, because over time, our educational system, I just want to touch very quickly on it, on our educational system, then see how you can put all the things together and enlighten us even more. Now, you have talked about the derisive treatment of religious studies and how eventually our people and how Francophones wanted, always um, made us look as if we're outcasts because our people did religious studies in school. Now, and somehow it accounts for the high rate of esoteric sects in the Francophone society, because you notice that Francophones have a lot of, many of them are into Freemasonry, many of them are into Rosicrucianism, and and it has made it in such a way that if you don't belong to those sects within the public service, there are certain benefits that don't come to you. And so, in the army, they openly sell them in the gendarmerie, in ENAM, in all these professional schools. And young men are forced to join those things because they want to become whatever thing within a very short space of time. So it has become a means of climbing the social ladder within a very short space of time. Now, I want to find out from you, with respect to our mission school system, which trained the crust of our society and gave value to and enthroned morality and other great values. How was the school fees system at that time? And how did people get their scholarships to travel abroad? Because nowadays, by the time they put up a notice for a scholarship, they've already done their selection. They just put it up for formality's sake. They've already collected money from some people and everything else. Let us see how how people used to select the best students to go for, how they did their pre-selection for scholarships. I also know that in our time, we knew in our class those who were going to have the scholarship, because their performance from 1 to 5 and their performance in high school already told you that these people, they have a bright future. So it changed over time, and 25 point holders at the GCE now sell rice in the market, while those who have 2Bs are reading medicine. So I think, which is one of the things that sent us into this fight in the first place. So I want you to talk about the school fees in the mission schools, how it functioned at that time, how people used to pay fees, and where so that we can draw a parallel with what happens today. Our school fees today are 500,000, and our own children can no longer go to mission schools because Francophones cross the river and are ready to pay any amount. They steal the government money, they have the positions, they have the benefits, and so on. And so our children are gradually shifted to government schools, and you know, and so it has a ripple effect. So I would like you to look at that and draw a parallel so that even our mission schools can begin to see how much Francophone culture has infiltrated them and put our children at a disadvantage. Thank you.
That's very good. I'm glad you mentioned this proliferation of sects in Yaoundé, corruption and Francmasonry. It's not just that. You might also look at the looseness of Francophone women. If you look at the average secondary school or high school student in Francophone Cameroon, the women in particular, the girls in particular, a lot more loose, you know, unlike our girls from our side, who, you know, better behaved and handle themselves better and control themselves, and sometimes may want to wait, you know, till their rightful age before they can start dating or get married. A lot more prostitution in Yaoundé and Douala than you find in Bamenda or Boya or Mampi. Much of this still has to do with the division that we've had from this secondary missionary school. Now, in terms of school fees, how that was determined and how much and who paid them. The reason why they call missionary schools, their mission was to help. And so most of the secondary schools were subsidized, and the school fees were kept low, were made affordable. In Southern Cameroons, between 1954 and 1973, the economy, most everybody had a coffee farm. Most parents were self-employed, had economic, they produced coffee or banana, so they were, they had some income. And school fees in CPC Bali in 1965 was about 30,000 francs for the whole year. Today it's about 500,000. 30,000, any hard-working family can come up with 30,000. Whether you're just planting your granules, selling. And so kids got admitted there through the common entrance. The common entrance, you write it at the end of primary school, you pass, you score, you had a good score, then somebody from that school, Bali, Sacred Heart, Sase, they will come interview you, and you qualify, you get admitted. Now, sometimes tuition was determined by the amount. If you could not afford 30,000 francs in school fees, you could not afford all of it, but you were a good student. There were scholarships at all levels. There was church scholarship, there was a local council scholarship. The amount on local council, for example, had funds, scholarship that give out to Mancon students who pass on list A. Then the Bafut council, same thing, down to Manfred, same thing, and all across. So part of it too come from the church. Churches too could chip in in families where parents could not afford all of it. Later on, the government, the Department of Education, was providing some subsidies to schools, to Bali, to Sase, to other secondary schools at the time, Sacred Heart. Yeah. So it was a combination of funding sources, public, private, family, and, and tuition wasn't high, as I said earlier. Now, today it's about at least 500,000. Why did it go up so high? Yes, Dr. Fontaine explained it. It comes, it's so high today because francophones with their stolen money, as much as they deride our educational system, they flooded this system. They come in and they will bribe principals, Sacred Heart, Bali, and all across, give them money, and now and bring in kids who did not pass the common entrance, who did not score as high as our kids in the common entrance. And before the war broke out, I heard that students came from as far away as Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Central Africa, coming, taking sports from our kids from local villages that could have been a lifeline to their families. Their sports were given to people who would come in and pay. The average, because of marginalization, the average Southern Cameroonian, whether we live in Manpe, Kumba, or Bamenda, 500,000 plus a lot of money for somebody who doesn't have a job. And most Southern Cameroonians had no employment because of this marginalization. They had no employment. And so we were marginalized even in our own schools, in our own neighborhoods. I need not make mention of, the average person in Bamenda now cannot afford to buy land in Bamenda. The average person born in Limbe cannot afford to buy land in Limbe. Because the governor came in and took everything. They lead in southern Cameroon now, in Limbe in particular, in Boya, are the Bulus. I hear they control most of the land. So you're born in Limbe, you're born in Boya, you cannot afford to buy land in your own hometown. You cannot afford to go to secondary school in your own town.
Okay. Thank you, Prof. Thank you for this you've spent about the last 2.5 hours with us. It has been a lot, and a lot of people are watching us online. I am seeing. And SCBC has us back on ground zero. They are a huge part of the Southern Cameroonians we look to educate through these town hall sessions. We thank you for having made the time to spend with us and educate us. We are very grateful that you have agreed to come back when we can set up a panel discussion, which will be a little different format. We thank you for the quick switch in the format for today, since you ended up being the only one with us. But that was a lot that you've given us. So, and we also thank Pafru and Dr. Edmond and all the behind the scenes work they did for today. So we will give you the last word, Prof, before you leave us in your closing remarks.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks to your crew. Thanks to everybody on Ground Zero. I tip my hat to our frontline fighters from Ground Zero. Keep up the fight. I tip my hat to you, your generation. Amazonia belongs more to you than to us, the older generation. It is your country. It is your future. We will support, we continue to support, to maintain the momentum. East Timor won their fight against an enemy that was 10 times, 50 times bigger, more powerful. Eritrea won, Cape Verde, the smallest country in Africa, one of the smallest countries in Africa, fought against Portugal from 1960 to 1975. Cape Verde, and they defeated, they won. became independent. Cape Verde has a population of just 500,000 people, but they fought against Portugal. Portugal at the time was a member of was backed by the US and backed by France. They were actually getting weapons from France and the US to fight against Cape Verde. The Cameroonians fought and won. Guinea-Bissau, they fought and won. So we are winning. We're going to win this struggle. There are two types of war. There's just war and there's unjust war. Ours, we're fighting for a just cause. It's a just war. Vietnam fought against America, fought against France, and they won. Why? Because they were fighting for a just cause. We are the Vietnam of our time. We are the East Timor of our time. We are the Eritrea of our time. We are going to win. International opinion is beginning to sway in our favor. So I tip my hat to you. Stay focused, maintain the momentum, and victory is ours. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you again. Thank you. Thank you. And all the best to you, Prof.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. So that was Professor John Fobanjom, University of Massachusetts. Again, the Secretariat is very grateful to Dr. Edmond and Powerful Kimbang. We remind Southern Cameroonians that if you know or have anyone who you think should be at this town hall, should be invited to educate us, inform us, please reach out to the Secretariat and we would make arrangements for them to come and educate us. We thank SCBC and we thank those watching us on Ground Zero and on social media. I don't know if we should immediately, Secretariat, do we immediately go to the second part of the program, or is there some discussion on what we've just heard?
I think given the time, and I'll leave it to the others to interject, but maybe we go straight to the second part of the program.
Yes, I will also think that we should go straight to the second part of the program, and we may come back during our normal discussion to comment a little on some of the things, because it's quite a rich package. I think we can never have enough of what Prof has shed light on today. We should nevertheless go ahead and let's see what we can do.
Okay, I'm just sharing my screen because the Secretariat had reached out to somebody to talk to Southern Cameroonians about the fate of our three prisoners of conscience who were taken from Kondengi to SED on October 13th or thereabout, and were not found until the lawyers mounted a very vigorous search for them. They were originally, as we saw in the statements from one of the lawyers, in the underground bunkers, but have been brought up now to the upper levels, but are in very, very poor health. Unfortunately, we didn't want to, for the person's own security, we didn't want to put out the name and the information too early, so that, because we all know the regime and they're on ground zero. Unfortunately, they have a family emergency and weren't able or won't be able to join us today because of a family emergency. But nonetheless, we still think that we need to highlight what La République is doing. This is not the first time. We are all familiar with what happened to Wazizi and some of the other prisoners who were picked up from womb since 2017, 2018, and have not been heard of till today. Presumably dead, because if they were in jail anywhere, our other Southern Cameroonians who are in all the prisons about and who have been able to reach out would have mentioned them. So because we were not able to have this person come on today, maybe we just leave this for an open discussion. If Southern Cameroonians have any opinion, we are on SCBC on ground zero. If people want to post comments in the Facebook chat or from Ground Zero, you can just unmute yourself uh, and say something about Tita or Hamlet or John. So the floor is open for the discussion on these three. And then after them, we are going to remember Baby Caroline. Because of the huge misinformation, we've all seen flyers and lies being made or propagated by La République. They are now trying to make um, the gendarme, the victim, and demonize the mother and the baby they killed. So we are going to address that after we talk about our three prisoners of conscience who were being tortured or who have been tortured and continue to be tortured in SED. So if anybody wants to chime in on this subject, the floor is open. Yes, Dr. Fontem, go ahead. I see your hand is up.
Yes, Mr. Moderator, thank you very much. One of the things that I want to say about I greet our fellow Southern Cameroonians, and it's unfortunate that these young men have to go through this. If you look at these gentlemen in this picture, they're all putting on glasses. Most of them, when they were arrested, I'm saying most of them, including other peers of theirs who are in detention, they were not wearing glasses. They did not have eye problems. These eye problems are the unfortunate consequence of the torture they have gone through. And so many of them come out with this visual impairment because of the conditions under which they are kept and the physical and psychological breakdown that is La Republique's modus operandi. And so it is important that when we see what our brothers and our children are going through in the hands of La Republique, we should be able to work together as a people so that we can shorten this captivity, we can shorten this exile, so that we can shorten the experience that we're going through in the hands of La Republique. La Republique has, over the years, it has been established that La Republique does not have any regard for people from our part of the country. For those of us who lived and grew up in Yaoundé, you needed to see when they killed one of us. Under any circumstance, maybe a neighborhood fight or robbery attack or anything, once any of us died, it did not mean anything. The police, at times the gendarmerie will not even come to do the investigation. They will just come to the scene and they hearsay that people are hearsay and speculating. At times they will be the ones to speculate so as to make it look unserious or even make the person who died a problem. So what they are doing to our people in their dungeons, in their prisons, is just what they have been doing to us for so many years. I cry for these young men because had they not been discovered, they would have pounded these young men to pulp and extinguished them. Look at them. Fine boys, handsome, good looking. It's just unfortunate.
I thank you, Dr. Fontem, and some of the information we have gathered. One of them, Hamlet, was already had a scheduled procedure at the Central Hospital. He was supposed to go the next day for surgery, and was taken out of his cell. They were deceived. They were told they were being taken to the military tribunal, and they went out. And I think part of the reason why they were even found was the protest that had been mounted in the prison by the other prisoners of conscience, and word had circulated that Hamlet in particular had died, and so La République tried to, whitewash their crimes, and so were forced to bring them up, make them surface or resurface. So, given the fact that he couldn't go for this procedure, God alone knows what his situation is now. But he was already in bad state. And Dr. Fontem, you're right. We all saw from the bunker video that was put out by Patrick Dango and the others what those conditions are. They are kept in permanent darkness, and that affects their sights and just the health and sanitary conditions of those cells. But you're right. These guys are losing their sight at a very young age. If there's anybody else who wants to chime in or has any update or any news that can be shared publicly, you can just unmute yourself or raise your hands and chime in. But we want to keep this case. That's why we have their pictures up as long as it has been up, so that it is being broadcast back home. It is being picked up by as much of the international community as possible. We have to keep talking about it. What Professor John Fobanjong just said is what we have always stated, as in one of our town hall hours, we were able to juxtapose the activities of the BR regime and the activities of Adolf Hitler's Nazi Germany. And they are carbon copies. What BR is doing is a carbon copy of what Adolf Hitler did, using his army more as a personal militia to kill and exterminate people who he doesn't agree with, or people who don't agree with him. And that's what is happening to our brothers. We have to keep the spotlight on this. So if anybody wants to chime in, say more about them, go ahead. Either just unmute yourself or raise your hand.
Unfortunately, I cannot raise my hand.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, comrade.
I think for me, looking at what is happening to these people, especially at this moment in the revolution, when all of us understand what is going on, the level of impunity that which La Republic can still at this time take our people that already have in captivity to torture them further. If there's anybody out there that still has doubt, I don't know how that is possible, that still thinks there's something that we can have with these people, this right here should tell you everything that you need to know. This is people you've already captured, and you had under custody for how many years now? I don't even understand what is the point of them torturing them as they have over the last few weeks. And if anything, stories like this and incidents like this should make us even more hardened, make us more determined to continue the fight. And if that's one message that we should be passing out across strongly, that should be the message. By putting this picture up and by shedding a light on it, that they should know that we are going to be more determined and going to fight even harder. That's really all that I have to say.
I think you're right, Francis. I don't know what these people are thinking, but what Professor Fobanjong just reminded us of what La République and the French did when they were killing the Bamilekes and the Bassars and putting their heads on sticks along the roads and at junctions. I think La République is doing this as a scare tactic, using them as an example, so that thinking that it is going to deter our young men, maybe, by this kind of brutality, because that is the only language they speak, is brutality. That is the same script France has used even before the fight for independence in Africa, They used it in Indochina. They used it in Haiti. France has no regards. They are one of the most evil set of beings because France has had that policy. Anything which is not French, they have no regard. They just kill, 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 kill. That's the only language they speak. I think this is just to intimidate. Unfortunately, they don't realize it is, as you rightly said, it just hardens because everybody now sees it as the only option. We don't see it as a way of deterring us. We see it as an example of what they want to do to all of us. And so, yes, uh, we have to continue this fight. We have to continue this fight. And then we just pray for them, that they just get to a point where um, God can give them the fortitude, to get through this suffering. So if there is nobody, yeah, go ahead. Somebody was going to say something.
Yeah, it's Edmund. When I look at this, I think about it, in two ways, and it kind of explains some of the policies that we're seeing on the ground. Um, Policy number one is the random killings of our young men and women. Because when you see this, the only crime that these people have committed is to be young and Amazonians, right? So I think that at this point, our public seems to be regretting why they even took them alive and why they didn't just eliminate them, on the field. And part of the reason, so when they take these young men, the hope is, yes, we'll be able to get somebody to concoct stories and then get somebody to betray their brothers or their brethren. And sometimes when they cannot, the next thing is to execute you and eliminate you. And if you see where our young men are picked up at random and our young women are killed and shot at some kind of wild beast, it is for reasons like this. They don't want to, at this point, get up to a point where they even think that they're human enough to be able to hold them in their jail to give them anything due process. And I hear people keep, just like Francis said, still talk about, the system. He is talk about courts in La Republique as if the courts there meant anything. Justice in La Republique is what the powerful say it is. And justice in La Republique is what serves the interests of La Republique, nothing else. And I agree with Francis that each time you see this, I think we all have to, the only way I would think of, helping these people beyond our prayers, beyond contributing to make sure that we fund the legal defense fund, is by saying we are going to contribute everything we have, money, energy, talent, everything, to make sure that these people, the pain that they're going through does not go in vain. And who knows whether they're going to come out alive. And if they come out alive, they will be scarred forever. And it's not easy to go through what these people are going through. You come out through, on the other hand, these people might suffer from PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder, and their lives may really just have been snatched away from them. Even if they come out alive, they'll just be existing. Many of these people will just be existing. And so when people think about what they are going through, you should think at it at multiple levels. It is not just enough for a human being to breathe. Breathing is not synonymous to living. And I really knows this very well. That those dungeons, those torture chambers, and the other thing they do is exactly what the Nazis used to do. Sometimes they just want to tell you, somebody just kill people for spite. You know, we saw it on the, I think, the video that the small little clip that we played the other day about on the town hall hour. Um, you know, whereas a man can just get up to a woman and just because a baby is making noise, and he decides to say to snatch that woman from the baby's arms, and the baby says no. I mean, if the mother wants to cry or protest, the mother's life, you know, it's taken away, it's cut short. So these people, I don't know, none of us would ever know that the whatever Big is claiming they did, you really cannot even buy it because they've not had access to any lawyer. They have not had access to any, they themselves, nobody is giving them any ability to be able to tell their own story. So I don't know whether they are alive now, but I'm just appealing for all of us to make sure that we do our own part. And the only thing we'll do for them is contribute with, our resources, our energy, and our efforts. So that's all I'm appealing for us out in Cameroonians, to get back and think about it. And all of us that are here, we're watching, we are actually from the comforts of our home. But these guys are actually in the dungeons. We can do better for them by actually not only praying for them, but contributing to the revolution.
Thank you, Dr. Edmond. Well said. Thank you. Thank you so much. If anybody else has something to say, if not, then we would switch over to the memory of Baby Martha. I think it's something we are going to talk again about during Town Hall Hour tomorrow because of the disgust. And now you see that, like Francis said, if anybody is thinking how we can live with these people, these are the kind of things that should really make us scratch our heads. Because despite the fact that they killed this little girl, this baby, as if that is not enough, they are now on a campaign where they are using their communication cells and their social media talking heads, creating posters, lying about the stories that the gendarme died in an accident, the gendarme was pursuing a thief, as if this 5-year-old girl is a thief. Her father, who is in the US, because it's typical for La République to go after the parents. Even when they killed baby Martha, her mother had to go into hiding. The Takumbang mama who came out when baby Dialé was killed is now in hiding because La République thinks that when they commit crimes, the victims must accept it as the duty of La République to dehumanize them and brutalize them. And we felt that this campaign they are on, this character assassination campaign, to add insult to injury by now trying to what is it? What is the word when somebody is on the way to sainthood? Beatification, I think, trying to beatify this gendarme and cleanse him because he's a Bulu Beti man, and because their own people are angry, they are now trying to make him a saint, a good man who was helping people cross the roads and do all of that stuff, who was running after a thief. That just tells you that they have no remorse at all, none whatsoever. That is even lower than killing the child, that after the child is dead, they go out of their way to continue this satanic rites or refrain. I don't know what to call them. So we felt it important that we continue to keep the memory of baby Dialé alive. And we continue to remind the world of what BIA is doing. Like Edmond just said, we had this clip in Town Hall Hour 2 Sundays ago. We might have it again tomorrow. of the Germans who just snatched babies from the Jews and shot them at point blank range. And this is what BI is doing. If this was a mistake, if this was something that they really felt this guy didn't do on purpose, they would not have gone out of their way to demonize a 5-year-old and her mother and harass the family. You know, when you're sorry about something, when something is a mistake, the first thing you do is admit it, and then you try to make amends. The fact that they cannot even admit it is an acknowledgement that it was the guy's right to shoot and kill. So they can decide who lives and who doesn't live. They can just shoot, and we cannot live with people like that. So that will just introduce this. If anybody has anything to say or add on this subject, remembering baby Diale and keeping her memory alive, just unmute yourself or raise your hand.
Yeah, it's tough. Again, it's me, it's Edmund. I see that little bag that baby Diale has. My my twins are 6 years old, just about this age. They have the same bags, you know. And you look at her, you look at your own kids, and you think about it from that very human perspective. And they've, like I said, they've assassinated this girl, this young child, this baby. But they want to assassinate her character, actually. But I think that they are right in calling, in saying that the gendarme was going after a thief, if we didn't already know. Because in their eyes, we are all thieves, right? So from their perspective, we are all thieves. They are right in casting their gendarme or the monster as somebody who was actually, as you say, maybe there is a different word for beatification of the same in hell, in Tartarus. And that's the language we are speaking. The problem is the psalmist say that if you cannot ask us to sing the Lord's songs in a strange land, and that's why we don't understand that language. We don't understand that language because we are in a strange land. You know, in our own land, that guy would be the most coward criminal. In our own land, that guy would be the most depraved of humans. In our own land, you know, babies, in fact, this will never even have happened. But in their land, that person, because that person is actually trying to actually help the regime exterminate the people, you know, all these nuisance who are us, who have dared to actually even raise our heads and talk about our rights, then that person to them is actually a hero. So you can see it. We're not speaking the same language because we're not the same people. We don't have the same values. That's why we don't speak. That's why we cannot understand their language. Just look at it and think about, you know, the call-offs, the Biafras. And the reason I always remind everybody is when they talk about oneness of the territory or oneness of Cameroon, they're talking about oneness of the territory. They're not talking about oneness of the people. If you went if you went hunting for a reason, if you went hunting and a tiger or some wild beast, actually even with its own cubs, was actually, you know, and you saw that encroaching on your property, and one of you killed that slaughtered cub, and then follow up by actually running or after, or maybe even killing the mother, or maybe the lion. Would that mean anything to you? You come back and you're happy. If that person got injured in the process of slaughtering that wild beast, then you have to pity your person. After all, the hunter, it is the exploit of the hunter and not the bravery of the animal, of the animal, of the game that is actually sung by the hunter. So we are the hunted. And this is the reason why we must understand this language. And it is us who have to say no, that we are human. And it is us who have to say no. That imagery of baby caroling that you want to give is not right, and that evil monster who slaughtered this baby, that most coward of people who slaughtered this baby, that we're not going to give an inch, we're not going to accept that their image should be glossed over. For those of us in America who actually are here, we saw parallels with George Floyd. In the eyes of some people in this country, the clown, the coward who actually nailed on George Floyd's neck was actually considered a hero in some quarters, and they protested. This is that's the parallels that we have to draw, and actually say to us again, just as I was talking about the lives of the comrades in jail, these baby matter, I mean baby Caroline as baby matter as those that died in Gabon, as those who died in in the school.
Kumba.
That these people, I don't know I don't know what heart you may have if these people don't whisper in your brain or maybe in your dreams to tell you, please keep fighting for us. I mean, just when you start thinking that you're maybe, I know how heavy this may be, that sometimes a lot of us are called on to do many things, and we sometimes think that we are spending money that we could have used to do other things. But just remember the lives of these people. Just remember this, yes, yeah, that this could have been our own Oprah Winfrey in the future. This could have been any of the little Serena Williams or whatever, or maybe some of the people who would develop some of the medicines or the sciences that would help our people. And maybe these children lives must not go in vain. That's all I would say on this. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Edmond. Thank you very much. As you said, we'll just remind people that DAC is doing a very good job. It's a Southern Cameroon's portal. I think Takumbang has a fund to assist the family for baby Diale and the other children, baby Mata and the Kumba children and the Ngabu children. If you want to support, there is another legal defense fund for the lawyers who are fighting for our prisoners of conscience. So there are a number of very good causes on the DAC website. So if you want to go to dacommunity.org and scroll down and click on all campaigns, you would see where you can support in your own way. If anybody wants to say anything on any of the subjects today, this is your opportunity. Just raise your hand, unmute yourself, and make your participation. I don't know if there's anything in the Facebook chat. I've not been able to. Okay, no. Okay, so if there is nothing else anybody has to say or to add, Secretariat, it's now 8 p.m. Amber. Secretariat, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes. Do you think we should get an early stop to this edition of the town hall? It's about 8 p.m. Amber now. I don't know if anybody has anything else they want to bring up to the attention of the town hall.
Yeah, I think we'll give a couple of minutes for matters arising if there's anything we need that somebody wants to bring up. If there's nothing, then I think we can call it a decent 3 hour, 3.5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, 4 hours, right? Emma, unless your clock in yeah, Dr. D's scan is off.
Okay.
Thank you for the math correction.
Yes.
Yes. Go ahead. You said Dr. D?
Yeah. Dr. D, your hand is up.
Right? Yes. Go ahead, Dr. D.
Yes, I just it's just a comment. I want to commend the town hall for today. It was really very educative, and
to appreciate the initiative so far for the Secretariat. And to say that I believe that for quite a while our people have been talking about political education and to know exactly where we're coming from, because sometimes our people don't understand the state because they don't know the history or the story. So I want to just table this request that we should encourage some of this kind of sessions that we've had today. If we can be able to reach out to our founding fathers, those that are still alive and who can be able to speak, to come more often and talk to us. And we also market this to our people to know that this can be a platform for them to actually know our history and be happy to know what happened to us and what we're trying to say concerning our future. It will be a very good thing. I believe that this is the beginning of a real opportunity for our people to hear some of the things that maybe they have not been able to hear in the past. So I encourage this effort, and I believe that those that have been saying that we need to give our people civil or political education will know that, as a matter of fact, Town Hall at this point can provide some of those services to us. So kudos, guys. Carry on and continue in this direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. D. And it's our collective effort. There are a lot of people in the community who reach out and propose, guests, and we continue to call on everybody to do what they can to help us secure these guests who can educate us. The Secretariat is just here to do the prep, but the town hall itself is by we are just the grounds crew. The actual games are being played by the by the teams. We are just the ground crew. We prepare the turf. That's all we do. The market. Exactly. Exactly. We open the market, we sweep, and then. But thank you. Your acknowledgement is well taken and much appreciated. Thank you. Dr. Fontem, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I just hope that I'm not talking too much, but generally, when I'm in a good mood and the topic of the day is so interesting, it makes my brain bubble, and lots of ideas, lot of reminiscences, and some of the things that we might have collected from the elders begin to come up. So I just wanted to say that there are a number of things that in future we should try to look at. I think this education of our people, it should be constant. And in the next discussion, planning meeting of the Secretariat, I think some of those suggestions will come up on how we can make slots for our people to watch or listen to, from time to time. For instance, when you move through Yaoundé, you see lots of high fences. But when you travel through southern Cameroon, except for those people who have made some money from Yaoundé and become very, very rich, and build walls that are higher than their houses, most of the homes are fenced with hedges. In the days of southern Cameroon, we did not have fences, and people and our parents tell us that people could even leave their homes, go out to the farm from morning to evening, and come back and nobody will break in. There were no walls, no fences, no gates. But today, people are beginning to erect fences and gating. Those are the kinds of things that we need to find out and then work towards the restoration of our values.
because joining La Republique has also led to the diminution of so many great values that we have. You see, under some of the things that my grandfather used to tell me, and which have really made me, at times when we look at this fight and we see how people are trying to unroof, are trying to roof a new house with zinc from an old house, it can never really work. Anything that has to do with La Republique, value from La Republique, please let us stand up and resist it. Let us resist with our mind, our body, our soul, because any attempt to go back to this same status quo ante, which is that of La Republique, then the fight would have been in vain. There is something in La Republique, a situation whereby if you're working with your wife in the public service, they will take your wife and send her to Gawa. They are sending you to Gawa. And by doing that, they have broken so many marriages, they have destroyed so many homes. And when you ask them, they don't see anything wrong with it. But if you look at the Ngulubeti culture, that is where the problem comes from. And so eventually the culture of that ruling class has now typified, our own existence. And if you look, even if you look at the way people go to, the way they have battered the economy and made life so terrible, it has forced our people to be going to the market literally every day. For those who grew up in Yaoundé and in those Beti Buru areas, you remember that the people go to the farm every day. If they need to do something, they go and buy the farm. And when they sell land to you, they erect their canopies and start eating pork, fish, until the money gets finished. And when it gets finished, they come and knock on the door again and tell you that there's some extra land down there you can come and get it. So they spend their time always eating. And that's how they have plundered the country. So one of the things that we are resisting and we are trying to break free from, is from that complacence whereby people condone certain things and tell themselves, how man will do now what. In our time, we did not have that. In the days of Southern Cameroon, we did not have that. And so let us together as a people go travel back down memory lane and learn the things that, and remind ourselves, for those who can still remember, of how we used to be. We were once a good, prosperous people. And for those who did not live it, let us learn how our parents, our grandparents lived life as decent, honest, and well-meaning people. I yield.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fontaine.
Mr. Moderator,
Yes.
if I might just a little bit about what Dr. Fontaine has said.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I think if you look at the reason why those houses are all in, why they all have fences, just think about this quote from Jean-Jacques Rousseau, right, in the Social Contract. Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chain. One thinks of himself of the master, but then he's even a greater slave. The problem is, in that system, everybody, you want to show everybody else your status. You build a house, but then because you build a house and you've impoverished everybody else in the process, you then need to build these long fences in order to keep the thieves outside. If everybody had enough to eat, who steals? Who's gonna come after you? Just look at here, since you got to United States, and if you can go to UK, right? How many fences have you seen? They don't exist because most people have enough to be able to at least get some little, something on their table. So I think that this is the problem. I mean, as we begin to build and lay the groundwork for a new society, we've got to think about the strength. The strength of the chain is measured by its weakest point and not by the strongest one. So if we all want to be free, if we want our children to be free in Southern Cameroon, we must build a society that is married
sure that the least actually has enough to be able to feed, to be able to fend for themselves, I mean, to be able to feed their families and send their children to school and aspire for the same things that are actually, that all human needs are predicated on. So these are the things that we have to really like start thinking about now. And coincidentally, that is actually how democratic societies function and work. And so you were talking about those ASEAN. I remember in my own village that I would travel to the BLM and I would go there, and people would leave their stores open and go to farms. You just come and go to the store and pick whatever you wanted to pick, and put the money there. If the person is not there, the most anybody did was to pick a small piece of wood and then just put it across the door to just show that they are not in. Nobody locked the stores, but you can't do that now. So, but that is at the time when the moral education that somebody, that Pastor Bajam was talking about, was still with us. So I think we have a lot of work to do, and I just when I hear these things, they just make all of us think. But if we just think about it now, and it ends here, then we would really be doing our community a lot of disservice. It is for all of us to go and start thinking, how do we build a society which would allow the most talented to drive, production and all the stuff, but allow the people, but also give back so that everybody within the community at least has enough, to be able to take care of their needs, their basic needs. And I'm not advocating for socialism, I'm just advocating for a human society.
Thank you, Doc. So, I don't know if there are any more reactions or comments. So many messages have come through on the WhatsApp, people reacting to what today's discussions have been. And what I have received so far have been very, very positive feedbacks. And I agree. I just hope our people would attend these town halls more often. There seems to be a larger crowd when there is some trivial gossip, yes, internecine fighting, and things that don't really educate or help move the needle. I think that's another thing we have copied over the last 50 years, because a lot of the things that animate, especially the Betty Bulu people, is what they sit in the bars. Those nonsense Cartier talk in the bars, you really see them animated. What's happening in the news and the important things about the country, you don't see them animated. The crap bar talk when they've drank a lot of their red wine, you really see them engaged and passionate. So that's something we have to get away from. But nonetheless, the town hall will keep doing its part. It's a slow process, but hopefully our people would catch on.
And with help from everybody, right? Like all of us there now, there's still about 20 people on this forum. Every one of us can get out there and begin to look for people they think are really good fit for a town hall and get to the secretariat and
Yes.
we discuss about it. So this way, it makes it easier. So the programs that are brought on the town hall, or maybe the people that are brought to the town hall, reflect our collective wishes.
Absolutely.
Because many of us can only have so much reach, but I'm sure everybody just get out there. If you have somebody that you think we can get to the town hall, just get to the secretariat and we can talk about it and get that person to the town hall on the town hall platform. There is no fee, right? There's no fee. There's no fee.
Exactly.
So there's we just think that we can do much better than this as a collective people.
Yes, absolutely, Doc. Absolutely. So thank everybody, and Secretariat, if we're done, I would With your permission, Secretariat asks for a motion for this 48th edition of the Southern Cameroons International Town Hall to be adjourned.
Yes, so I would like to move a motion that the 48th session of the Southern Cameroon International Town Hall adjourned for today.
Okay, I will need a secondment to that motion. I would need somebody to second the motion for us to adjourn. Thank you. Thank you, Doc. Yes. Okay, so it's almost what is it? Plus 5, 8:30 Amber. We started so it's been almost 3.5 hours. So just to remind people, we have town hall hour tomorrow. It stays at 8 p.m. Amber. But for those in America, we are going to fall back 1 hour, so it will be 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 8 p.m. Amber for tomorrow's edition of Town Hall Hour, which will also be very, very interesting, as we will be talking about the Pandora Papers. For those who don't know, you could Google the Pandora Papers and how it affects Cameroon, just like the Panama Papers or the Paradise Papers. Some revelations of some official's wife in Cameroon who is involved, just to show how rotten and how corrupt the system is, and another reason why we cannot continue to be with these people. And then touch again on the baby Diale with this campaign, this smear campaign by La République, as they are preparing to give him this honorable burial. It looks like they're trying to bury him the same day Biya came to power, November 6th. And they're making all this noise. I mean, they can do it, it's their right, but they shouldn't do it in the name of a child they killed. That is the inhumane part of it, which we will talk about. So, Doc, I guess you have some other things for tomorrow? And the continuous burning of the villages. Huh?
Yes, the moderator, just FYI, you are host, so you can turn off the live stream.
Oh, okay. Let me do that.
Yes, information, Mr. Moderator. We are having a second, the part two of the Southern Cameroon National Prayer.
Oh yes.
Yes, second part two of Southern Cameroon's National Prayer Night on Sunday. Since it will be midnight, 11:30 p.m. Amber time, midnight 1 o'clock Amber time. I think it starts at 5:30 Eastern time. So the link is in the town hall forum, and we realize that we are not only going to win this war physically, but we should also be able to win it spiritually. That is why, as a people, we need to pray together and take possession of our land. If we don't dismantle